The Excalibur drifted through the empty blackness of space, its engine's hum barely audible in the cold vacuum of the galaxy. Commander Eva Thomas stood at the bridge window, gazing out at the endless expanse. With a sense of unease, a strange tension filled the air despite the calm of the stars ahead. Her eyes flickered to the dimmed radar, read out a small blinking signal appeared on the edge of the display. She frowned, tapping the console to zoom in. The signal wasn't a blip from an asteroid or a rogue ship. It was something else, but too faint to be clearly identified. Commander Lieutenant Parker's voice broke through her thoughts. "We've got a strange energy reading approaching fast. Could be another ship or something worse." Eva narrowed her eyes and stood up from her command chair. "Keep monitoring, Parker. Report back when we get more info." Her instincts were telling her this wasn't just a coincidence. There was something off about it, something wrong. The seconds dragged on, and then it came. A massive shadow appeared on the radar so quickly it was almost impossible to track with their sensors. Too fast, too precise. The Excalibur was a fast ship, but this unknown vessel was faster, even more advanced. "Get us out of here," Eva snapped before the order even left her lips. The alien ship unleashed a pulse of energy so powerful the Excalibur shuddered violently, its systems flickering as lights flickered to darkness. The hum of the engines cut off completely, as though the universe itself had exhaled and erased their existence. The crew was thrown from their seats, some slamming into walls, others tumbling to the floor in stunned silence. Parker grunted from the navigation console, still dazed but conscious. "We're dead in the water, Captain. No power, no thrusters, nothing." Eva gritted her teeth, her mind racing. She fought the dizziness in her head. As she scrambled to the communications console, "Send a distress signal," she ordered, but the console refused to respond. "They shut us down completely," Ensign Cooper said, his voice tight with fear. "Nothing is working." The view on the bridge showed the massive alien ship looming just beyond their crippled vessel, the outline of the ship a dark silhouette against the stars. Its shape was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its surface glowed with an eerie light, as if alive. Somehow the air felt heavy with anticipation. And then it happened. The alien ship's exterior shifted, opening. Like the maw of a predatory beast, from the darkness of its hull emerged several smaller ships, each one sleek and deadly. As they descended toward the Excalibur, the first boarders slammed into the hull with a crash, their weapons crackling with energy that sent sparks flying as they tore through the ship's fragile defenses. On the bridge, the crew was paralyzed in fear, not knowing how to respond. Eva was no stranger to danger, but this was different. This was something beyond anything humanity had ever faced. The alien ship's communication systems crackled to life, and a deep voice echoed through the Excalibur's speakers. "This is the circle. We offer you no mercy. Your resistance will be futile." Eva's heart pounded in her chest, but she wasn't about to let fear dictate her next move. "We fight," she said with a fierce calm. "We fight to the last man." She glanced around at her crew, seeing the same resolve in their eyes. But it was too late. The invaders were already aboard. The alien invaders poured into the Excalibur. Like a storm, their armor glinted with an unnatural sheen. Their weapons crackled with energy. As they moved swiftly and efficiently through the halls of the ship, there was no mercy in their actions, no hesitation. Their goal was clear and relentless. Commander Eva Thomas stood frozen for a moment in disbelief, but she quickly snapped back to reality, her voice sharp and commanding. "Get to the escape pods now, move," she barked at the crew. The crew scattered to follow her orders with fear in their eyes, but with no choice in the matter. They scrambled through the halls as the alien forces advanced with terrifying speed, their footsteps echoing on the metal floors. Some of the crew managed to reach the escape pods, but others weren't so lucky. In the lower levels of the ship, Ensign Cooper and several others found themselves cornered by a group of the alien invaders, their weapons raised and aimed with deadly precision. Cooper's hand shook as he reached for his sidearm, but he knew it was useless against the overwhelming firepower of the aliens. "Run!" one of the crew shouted as the aliens closed in, but it was too late. Their escape was cut off by a barrage of energy blasts. The crew was taken down one by one. Their screams filled the air before they fell silent. Back on the bridge, Eva watched helplessly as the chaos unfolded before her eyes. The sounds of gunfire and explosions reverberated through the ship as the invaders took control with brutal efficiency. The once proud Excalibur was no longer the fortress it had been just hours before. Eva's heart sank as she realized they had no chance of surviving the onslaught. There was no way to fight back, no way to outmaneuver them in the state they were in. The ship's systems were down, they were vulnerable, and the aliens knew it. With a grim resolve, Eva turned to Lieutenant Parker, who was still struggling to regain control of the communications console. "Is there any way to send a distress signal?" she asked, her voice tight with urgency. Parker shook his head, his face pale with exhaustion. "All systems are fried, Captain. Nothing is working. We're completely cut off." Eva's mind raced. She couldn't let this be the end. Humanity had faced worse odds before. They had always found a way to survive, even when it seemed impossible. But this was different this time. They were up against an enemy far beyond anything they had ever encountered. Suddenly a voice crackled through the speakers, a chilling voice that sent a shiver down Eva's spine. "This is the Circle. We have disabled your vessel. Your resistance is futile. Surrender now, and we will grant you a swift end." Eva clenched her fists. The anger was boiling inside her, but she forced herself to stay calm. "We will never surrender," she muttered to herself, but the words held no power, no weight in the face of the invaders' overwhelming force. Just as she was about to give another order, the ship lurched violently. As an explosion rocked the hull, the aliens had breached the outer sections of the ship. The air was filled with the sound of alarms and panic as crew members scrambled to get to the remaining escape pods. Eva had no choice now. Her only hope was to get as many people out as she could and survive long enough to fight back later. But that seemed like an impossible task with the invaders already inside the ship. The escape pods were their last hope. Eva could feel the weight of the decision hanging over her every second as the crew scrambled to evacuate, knowing that the Excalibur was lost. There was no fighting back against the invaders, no recapturing their ship once the aliens took control. They had to survive. If humanity had any chance of winning, they had to get away to regroup and rebuild from the ashes. But the escape pods weren't large enough to hold everyone, and not everyone would make it to them alive. Eva felt the sinking despair of those odds every time she saw a fellow officer fall as the aliens advanced. "Commander," Lieutenant Parker's voice cut through the panic. "We're running out of time. The pods are almost full." His face was pale, his voice edged with the same fear that gripped everyone else on board. Eva nodded sharply. "Get to the last pod," she ordered as she ran toward the bridge's exit, taking a quick glance back at the chaotic scene behind her, knowing this might be the last time she saw the Excalibur standing strong. Her heart ached, but there was no time to mourn. As she passed through the narrow corridors, she could hear the eerie sounds of the alien invaders, their metallic footsteps, and low murmurs of their strange language echoing in the distance. The crew was doing their best to hold the line, but their odds were slim. Every door that slammed open only brought more of the enemy aboard their ship. They were fighting for their lives and for the future of humanity, but it wasn't enough. The Excalibur had fallen. When Eva reached the escape pods, she found the last few crew members desperately trying to seal the hatches. One of them was injured and unable to move, but he was still alive. "Help him," Eva barked at a pair of crew members standing nearby. They rushed to assist the injured officer, while Eva began checking the status of the remaining pods. The alien forces were close now. She could hear them just down the hall, their weapons humming with deadly intent. "We're almost out of time," she thought as she punched in the coordinates for the nearest safe haven, a barren moon, just on the outskirts of the system. It wasn't much, but it was a place to regroup and start over. "All pods are ready," Lieutenant Parker called out from the far end of the room. "We're all set to launch." Eva didn't hesitate. She pushed the button to initiate the launch sequence, and within moments the pods shot into the void one by one. They were cast off into the cold emptiness of space, their new destination, a moon that held nothing but dust and ruin. But it was a beginning, it was hope. As the last pod shot off, Eva was the last one to board. A few seconds after the hatch sealed behind her, she slumped into her seat, exhausted and trembling with fear. She looked around at the survivors, Some had their eyes closed in shock, others stared blankly at the walls of the pod, but they were alive. They had made it out. She glanced out of the tiny window at the wreckage of the Excalibur, her heart twisted as the memory of her ship and crew faded into the distance. "This isn't over," she whispered to herself. "We will rebuild, we will come back stronger." But the road ahead would be long and uncertain. The escape pods had landed on the barren moon with a soft thud that shook the survivors awake. Eva was the first to emerge from the pod, her breath visible in the cold air. As she scanned their surroundings, the moon was desolate and lifeless. Nothing but dust and rock stretched as far as the eye could see, but it was a safe haven for now. No sign of the alien invaders had followed them. "This is it," Eva muttered under her breath as she took a deep breath. The reality of their situation sinking in. They were stranded on a lifeless rock with no resources and no way to contact Earth or any other allies. They had to survive and find a way to rebuild from nothing. The survivors began to gather around Eva. Some were still dazed from the chaos of their escape. Others were already getting to work, setting up a small perimeter around their landing site, using the remnants of the escape pods for shelter. "We need to start thinking about next steps," Eva said aloud as she addressed the group. "We can't stay here forever. This moon is barren, and we have no supplies to last long." "But how do we rebuild?" Lieutenant Parker asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "We've lost everything, our ship, our equipment. We don't have enough to survive out here." Eva's gaze turned steely as she looked at the others. "We start by using what we have," she said firmly. "We have the wreckage of the Excalibur and the alien tech that we salvaged. We'll use that to create something new, something that can help us fight back." The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but they trusted Eva. She had led them through worse odds before, and there was something in her tone that gave them hope. They began scavenging the remains of the escape pods and searching for anything they could use. The process was slow and exhausting, but they had no other choice. The engineers and tech specialists worked tirelessly to salvage parts from the wreckage and reverse engineer the alien technology they had found. In the days that followed, the crew began to make some headway. They constructed makeshift tools and equipment from the materials they had on hand. They rigged up basic communication devices, hoping to find a signal and establish a connection with Earth or any passing ships, but there was still no way to send a distress signal that was strong enough to reach anyone beyond the moon. Meanwhile, Eva and her team worked to make sense of the alien technology. They had found the small artifact they had discovered during their escape seemed to be some kind of power source, but its purpose was still unclear. "This could be the key," Chief Engineer Jax Delaney said as he examined the artifact carefully. "If we can harness its energy, we might be able to power a ship or even a weapon strong enough to take down the Circle." Eva's heart skipped a beat. "We need more of these," she said urgently. "We need to find out everything we can about this technology and how it works if we're going to survive and fight back." The crew worked around the clock to study the alien power source, while also fortifying their camp against any potential threats. The days turned into weeks as they struggled to survive in the harsh conditions, but they never gave up. They had lost their ship, but they had not lost their will to fight. In the quiet of the night, Eva often found herself staring out at the stars, wondering how long it would take to get back home, and whether they would ever have the strength to face the aliens again. Weeks passed, and the survivors on the barren moon had made progress beyond what Eva had thought possible. They had constructed a small base. Using the wreckage of the escape pods and pieces of the Excalibur, they had created a makeshift lab to study the alien technology and began to understand more about the mysterious artifact. They had found the power source seemed to respond to human touch in ways they didn't fully understand, but it emitted a strange energy that was both dangerous and promising. Chief Engineer Jax Delaney had spent every waking hour working on the alien tech. Alongside the tech specialists, he was obsessed with figuring out how it worked and how they could use it to power something that could fight back against the Circle. "This thing isn't just a power source," Jax had said late one night as Eva stood by watching him work. "It's a key, it's something more than we thought. It's the energy we've been looking for to build the ship we need." Eva's heart had raced at his words. How long before we can use it to power a ship? Eva asked, her voice steady, but filled with urgency. Jax had paused for a moment to think before replying. It's going to take time. We still need to figure out how to harness the energy properly, but I believe it's possible we could retrofit the Excalibur tech with this and power a new vessel. Eva knew they didn't have time to waste. The Circle would eventually come looking for them, and if they were still stranded on this moon, with no way to fight back, they'd be doomed. She glanced around at the survivors working tirelessly, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and determination, and she knew they couldn't afford to fail. "We'll give you everything we've got, Jax," she said firmly. "Do whatever it takes. We're counting on you." Jax nodded without hesitation and immediately got back to work alongside his team. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew focused on their other tasks. Lieutenant Parker had taken charge of security, establishing patrols around the base to keep watch for any potential alien activity and ensuring the survivors were safe as possible from any threats. Eva spent most of her time coordinating the rebuilding efforts and making sure the crew stayed focused despite the mounting pressure. She knew morale was low with every passing day, but she also knew that their only hope was to keep pushing forward. On one particularly grueling day, Eva found herself standing outside the small base, looking up at the endless sky of stars. It was a lonely sight. No other ships, no other signs of life. Nothing but cold silence. The weight of their situation pressed heavily on her chest. But just as she was about to turn back inside, a small flicker of movement caught her eye. Something in the distance, a faint glow that seemed out of place. She narrowed her eyes and felt a sudden surge of adrenaline in her veins. "What the hell is that?" she muttered to herself before turning to Lieutenant Parker, who had just come out of the base. "Get a team together. Now we might have company." Parker's face tightened with concern, but he didn't hesitate. He gathered a small group of armed crew members, and they set out toward the source of the strange light, with Eva leading the way. As they moved closer, the glow grew brighter, and they soon realized it wasn't a natural light. It was coming from an alien ship. Something had found them. "They're here," Eva whispered under her breath. Eva's pulse quickened as they drew closer to the source of the strange light. The glow was unmistakable now. It wasn't just a distant flicker, but a powerful beacon shining from an unknown ship, the kind of ship that could only belong to the Circle. Lieutenant Parker motioned for the team to spread out. As they approached the light, they moved cautiously through the rocky terrain, their boots crunching against the dry surface of the moon. The eerie silence around them made every sound feel amplified. Eva's hand tightened around the grip of her sidearm, her mind racing through the possibilities. "Do you think it's a scout ship?" Parker whispered, "or something worse?" "Worse is probably more likely," Eva replied, her voice low and tight with tension. "Keep your guard up." As they neared the glow, it became clear that the ship was not just hovering in place, but had landed on the surface of the moon, its sleek, metallic hull gleaming in the pale light of the distant stars. Eva's heart dropped as she realized the size of the vessel. This wasn't a small reconnaissance ship. It was a full-on warship capable of taking down fleets with ease. "They found us," she muttered to herself, the thought sending a chill through her spine. They had no time to waste. Eva signaled for her team to spread out in a defensive formation. They needed to figure out how to deal with this threat before it overwhelmed them. The ship's hatch was open now, and from it emerged figures, the Circle soldiers, clad in their intimidating armor, their weapons crackling with energy as they began to scan the area. The team moved quickly into position, taking cover behind nearby rocks and the remnants of an old equipment cache that had been abandoned on the moon's surface. They were outgunned and outmatched, but they had no choice but to fight back. They couldn't let the Circle capture them or destroy everything they had worked for. "On my mark," Eva whispered to Parker. "We take them out quick and quiet." Parker nodded, his eyes narrowed as he focused on the alien soldiers. The tension was unbearable. As they waited for the right moment, Eva's mind raced through the plan in her head, and as soon as the lead Circle soldier stepped into their line of fire, she gave the signal. "Now!" In a blur of motion, the team sprang into action. Gunfire rang out as they fired on the alien soldiers. The first few fell with precision strikes, But the Circle were quick to respond. Their weapons unleashed powerful energy blasts that scorched the ground where the humans had been moments before. Eva ducked behind a large rock as the enemy returned fire. "Fall back," she shouted as the team began to retreat toward their base. They had to lure the aliens away from the wreckage of the escape pods and the makeshift lab where the rest of the survivors were holed up. They couldn't let the Circle destroy everything. Parker fired off another shot, taking down one of the Circle soldiers with a direct hit, but their numbers were overwhelming. The team was being pushed back slowly, but surely the Circle had them cornered. Just as the situation seemed dire, Eva's communicator crackled to life. "Commander, we got a problem." Jax's voice sounded strained through the static. "The power source is unstable. We need more time to stabilize it." "We don't have time," Eva growled into the communicator. "We're being attacked. We need that ship ready now." As the aliens closed in on their position, Eva made a snap decision. "All teams pull back to the base." She ordered. "We fight there. We need to buy Jax some time." The team raced back to the base under heavy fire, their boots pounding against the moon's dry surface as blasts of energy whizzed past them. Eva's heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her focus. They had to make it back and buy Jax enough time to finish stabilizing the power source. Without it, they had no chance against the Circle. "Move faster," Eva shouted, trying to push her team forward even as the distance between them and the advancing aliens grew smaller. The base was just ahead now, a cluster of makeshift shelters and scattered wreckage, their only refuge on the barren moon. Behind them, the Circle soldiers were relentless, closing in with their superior speed and firepower. Every time they fired, the ground erupted in flashes of light, sending small rocks and debris flying into the air. Eva could hear the team's heavy breathing as they sprinted toward the entrance of the base, the familiar sense of dread creeping in. They were almost there when an energy blast struck the ground beside Lieutenant Parker, sending him crashing to the floor. A sharp cry of pain escaped his lips, but he quickly pushed himself back up, grit in his teeth. Eva didn't hesitate. She rushed over to him, pulling him to his feet as she yelled at the others to keep going. "Parker, can you keep moving?" she asked, her voice filled with urgency. "Yeah, just cover me," he grunted, clutching his side as they moved forward together. The rest of the team had already made it inside the base, but the Circle were hot on their heels. Eva fired a shot behind them, taking down one of the advancing soldiers. But there were too many more. The aliens were closing in on all sides now, forcing them back toward the center of the base. "Fall back. Get to the last line of defense," Eva ordered, her voice sharp as she led the way. They ducked into the small defensive position they had set up earlier, a makeshift barricade built from the wreckage of the escape pods. The group huddled together, trying to keep their heads down while returning fire. The Circle were relentless. They moved like a coordinated force, working together to flush the humans out of their position. Eva knew they didn't have much time before they would be overwhelmed, and Jax's warning echoed in her mind. "Jax, how's the ship?" she shouted into the communicator, hoping he could hear her over the chaos. There was a moment of static before Jax's strained voice came through. "The power source is almost stable. We're ready to integrate it, but we need more time to finish the modifications. I can't make it happen while you're under fire." Eva's eyes darted around the barricade, calculating their dwindling options. "We don't have time for more delays. We need that ship now." She glanced at the rest of the team. Some were injured, some were exhausted, but all were determined to hold their ground. "Everyone, cover me. I'm going to buy us some time." Without waiting for a response, Eva stood and charged toward the Circle soldiers, firing her weapon as she went. The force of the blast sent one of the aliens stumbling back, but she was already moving again, dodging their return fire. Her pulse raced as she made her way toward the other side of the base, hoping to create a distraction long enough for Jax to finish the final modifications on the power source. The Circle soldiers followed her, but they were momentarily distracted by the unexpected attack. Eva gritted her teeth, praying Jax would get the ship ready before it was too late. Eva's heart raced as she ducked behind a crumbling piece of wreckage, the sound of energy blasts ringing in her ears. Her team was holding their ground, but it was clear that they were outnumbered and outgunned. The Circle were relentless, closing in on all sides, and every second felt like a lifetime. Her eyes flicked toward the entrance of the base, where the team had fortified their position. They needed to survive long enough for Jax to finish his work. The makeshift ship was their only hope, and she knew if they didn't get it powered up soon, they wouldn't make it. Eva glanced back at Lieutenant Parker, who was still injured but managing to return fire. She could see the strain in his eyes, but there was no time to waste. She needed to keep the aliens at bay long enough for Jax to get the power source online. "Hold them off as long as you can," Eva shouted to the team, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "Jax, how much longer?" She yelled into her communicator, her fingers tightening around the weapon as she fired again, taking down another Circle soldier. There was a moment of silence before Jax's voice crackled through. "We're almost there. Just a few more minutes. I can see the ship powering up now." Eva's pulse surged with hope. "Good. Keep at it. We can't hold out much longer." She risked a quick glance over the barricade, spotting a few of the Circle soldiers advancing, their weapons raised. She fired off another shot, taking down one of the aliens, but there were too many. Their numbers seemed endless, and they were closing in fast. Just as Eva was about to give the order to retreat to the deeper chambers of the base, a loud, deep hum filled the air. It was a sound she had only heard in her nightmares, the sound of an enormous ship coming to life. She looked up, her heart leaping in her chest. The power source had activated. The makeshift ship, powered by the alien tech they had scavenged, was coming online. "Get ready," Eva shouted, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "The ship's powered up. We're getting out of here." The Circle soldiers seemed momentarily confused by the sudden hum of the ship, but that was all the time they needed. Eva's team regrouped and made a break for the ship, firing back at the aliens as they ran. The alien forces hesitated for just a moment, unsure of the sudden shift in the balance of power. "Keep moving," Eva urged, her voice firm as she ran ahead, her team following behind her. The ship was a short distance away, but with the Circle closing in, every step felt like an eternity. The survivors made it to the ship's entrance, and Eva was the first aboard. As she stepped inside, she took a moment to breathe, knowing that they had made it just in time. The ship was alive, and with it, they now had a fighting chance. "All aboard, let's go," Eva said, her voice steady but filled with determination. The crew piled into the ship, and within moments, the doors sealed shut behind them. She rushed to the command deck, where Jax was already at the controls, his fingers flying over the instruments as he brought the ship online. "We're launching," Jax said, his voice tense. "Hold on." With a sudden lurch, the ship shot into the air, breaking free from the surface of the moon. Eva watched as the barren landscape receded beneath them, and the stars stretched out before them, endless and full of possibility. They had escaped. They had survived. But this was just the beginning. They still had to fight to reclaim their home and to take down the Circle once and for all. "This isn't over," Eva said softly, her eyes locked on the stars ahead. "This is just the start of our fight."